Hello and welcome. Today on the show, two people who are among those who have made India sit up and take note of the importance and crying need of a liberal arts education. On the program, it's my great pleasure to welcome Pramath Sinha, founder and trustee at Ashoka University, and also with me, Vineet Gupta, founder and pro-vice chancellor also at Ashoka University. Thanks both so much for taking out the time. I know that you have a lot on your hands. You are very busy men. Let me ask you, Pramath sir, first. For all those who say that, this is the renaissance of liberal arts education in India, do you believe that they're overstating the case, or are we actually looking at a situation where we are sitting up, taking note and going back to treating liberal arts with the kind of respect and dignity and honor that it deserves, like everything else does too?
Yes, absolutely. I don't think it's overstating the case at all. I think for far too long, post-independence, I think our founders of the country and the policymakers were very focused on building the technical manpower in our country, and it was understandably so. We needed to be self-resilient and reliant, and so the technology institutes came up, and that spawned a whole engineering education boom. The management institutions came up, that spawned a whole bunch of management institutions, and somewhere liberal arts education was there in the public system, but it was still very much a specialized liberal arts subject education. So what has happened, I think, is you are seeing a upsurge in this right now, because there's a natural pent up desire to get out of this very regimented, almost constrained learning environment that a pure specialization leads to. And I think that's why you are seeing this very strong interest from students and parents,
right,
as well as from people like us saying, there has to be an alternative, there has to be more balance than just having specialized education.
And we're seeing somewhat of a shift in India, so going back to liberal arts, getting, like I said, becoming mainstream as it was. So do you think this is all sort of part of the space evolving globally? How do you see this sort of working out over the next couple of decades?
I think in the context of a conversation between US and India, I think the 4-year liberal arts model, the way at least we want to practice it, is something that was really championed in the US and has been very, very dominant in US institutions. And to the extent, I think that in the US at least, it started to become a kind of a dominant model where some people were not going, more people were not going as much into sciences or engineering as the country would have liked to. Whereas in India, it was almost opposite,
right,
where I think the thrust
absolutely
was entirely on engineering and management. So I think the debate is in very different geographies, very different contexts, where India is an extreme example where the focus was entirely on professional
right
degrees, medicine,
so really
engineering.
opposite ends of the spectrum.
Opposite ends
really,
of the spectrum.
as it were.
Right, and so you need balance
Right,
both
right,
ways,
right.
So India needs balance, and probably
Right.
maybe US does too. So
Right.
I think.
So, when we look at our traditional education system, now this is the time of the year when there are so many parents, students looking at results, exams and all of that. In the last 2 years, definitely year and a half, we've seen more parents, especially because very often in a society like ours, parents drive decisions, think that liberal arts is no longer just soft, it's no longer kya karega iske baad, but now waking up to the realization that there is a whole world of opportunity out there. At the same time, we are caught in a trap where it's 100% or nothing, where students are driven to even suicide because they're not able to compete, they're not able to pass technical exams, they're not able to get top scores. It is a problem in a mindset which becomes very difficult to tackle. How do you see this? How do you see this challenge? How do you see India taking on this challenge, sir? Because this is becoming a big worry.
So I think that two things, if I hear you right, implicit in what you're saying. One is just the tyranny of the numbers, as I call it. And I think that as long as there's such a massive mismatch in demand and supply of educational institutions, we are going to continue to see this very harried and frenzied admissions process where lots of people are going to apply for very few positions. I think the government is trying to do a lot, but on the private education side, unfortunately, stuff is happening only at the state level. Ashoka as well is a Haryana state university. At the central level, the policy of creating new private educational institutions is almost stuck. and has been for a while. So, their focus has been much more on building more public systems, and that's expanding, and they are building more IITs and more IIMs and more central universities, and that's great. But if you look at just the demographics of 25 million kids being born every year, only 1 in 5 roughly going to college ultimately, that number to be taken up to 2 in 5, 3 in 5 over a period of time, you need a massive investment which has to come from the private sector. Unfortunately, the private sector has created an environment willy-nilly, whatever the reasons might have been, of great trust deficit between the regulator, the government and the private sector, for good reason, because
it's
you know what's
adversarial sometimes.
Correct.
In fact.
So, when we go out there as well, people think we are also crooks and that we are also out there to rook students and make money.
We're largely now looking at a system where the aim of education seems to be employment. Yet, when all these surveys come back at us and we see all these graduates and a handful of them only employable because they're lacking key skills which a well-rounded, a 360-degree education system should provide you, irrespective of the degree that you're doing. So that's another handicap then that our students face, that they've got these degrees, they spent all that money, they spent all those time, all those years of their life, and yet on all these, when these surveys come out, they're in the groups of the 70% who they say are not going to be employed. Language skills being the other big problem.
Both of us are engineers. And I think when we went into the work life, I as an entrepreneur, most of the things you had to really, you had to learn on your own, right? And most of what you learned in engineering, you felt you were really not applying. And which really made us question that what is the kind of education you would want to impart, what is the 3 years, 4 year, what should that college education be? And I think our generation of people is really asking that question. As long as we are convinced that this education can really help develop those skills, people are willing to take a bet. And I think more than parents, students are more excited. Students are saying, look, I don't want to continue in the sciences, or I have other passions, and I can still do well if I pursue those passions.
And the messaging that Sinha is talking about, that now the messaging is there, that this is not just artsy, it's not just soft, it's you can do a whole lot else. In fact, very often at par with what
and much better,
others can do.
Yeah.
Because I was speaking to somebody who's also got an engineering background and is now at Ashoka, and I said, what about, was there sort of unlearning and learning? And I got a great response. She said that I did all my studying when I was doing my engineering, and I'm doing all my learning now about life skills and all of that. So that's quite a sort of shot in the arm. But for instance, in the US, there's also talk about engineering majors having to study literature, arts, history, that you need to do that. It doesn't need to be either or. How far do you think, sir, we are from sort of looking at all of that? Because we look at technical skills as be all and end all even now. I mean, for the vast majority, getting into an IIT or getting into a top technical institution is still be all and end all.
Yeah. I think that attitude is also changing. A lot of what happens in different fields has often been led by some of the top institutions. I'll pick another institution. IIT Gandhinagar is a great example. It's Sudhir Jain, who came out of IIT Kanpur, is the director there. They've introduced lots of liberal arts courses into the curriculum. What most people don't realize, I went to IIT Kanpur, and it was set up under mentoring by MIT. MIT actually does this, which is a combination of liberal arts and engineering, really, and it's a liberal arts focused engineering degree, if you ask me. The original model for IITs was that too, by the way.
I see.
It's just that it got diluted over time. When we went to IIT too, we had these humanities and social science courses, but they almost became the equivalent of subsidiaries and you don't pay attention to it. The best faculty don't join because by definition they are subsidiary departments.
Absolutely.
But yet we had some of the best faculty in humanities and social science join the IITs in my time and in Vineet's time as well, and even today. So I do think that this has been lurking there somewhere, but we have let it decay or get stifled, right? And I think we just need to bring it back. And I think it will come back, because I think the IITs and the engineering colleges are also thinking, how do I distinguish ourselves? How do I get out of the run-of-the-mill degree? The crux of it is enabling smart young people to take charge of their own learning. Suddenly now people are getting transformed and changed much earlier than when they go out into the real world. It's not about which subjects. It could be engineering. It could be management, but it has to be taught in a different way. It has to be taught with multidisciplinarity, with an attitude that there are no right answers, that you are encouraged to ask questions, that you are encouraged to change your disciplines, your majors. You can choose what you want to do.
So in this scenario, if I were to ask you, how difficult has it been to sort of find the trainers with this kind of mindset? Because traditionally one sees that even institutions which sort of are initially promising and have big budgets, then start focusing that budget on getting in students. So the big thing is, big ticket messaging, big ticket advertising. Faculty somehow doesn't then figure. So for you personally, how difficult, keeping all this in mind and the approach that you wanted, how difficult was it to find these trainers?
Well, I think it has been difficult. It has been difficult, but I think that has also been the success of Ashoka. I mean, faculty has pretty much been at the heart of what Ashoka has become today. And just to add to what Pramath is saying, it's not only about the subjects, but in the way they are taught, and who's teaching them, and in the manner that they are being taught. I think that's really what has helped Ashoka gain the reputation it has gained. I think the country itself has a lot of outstanding teachers.
Are you ever sort of surprised at the traction, at the buzz around Ashoka, at the success, if I may say, around Ashoka so early on? I mean, maybe there was no doubt in your mind that this would succeed, but this is very early on.
If I look at how far we have come so quickly, then certainly, knock on wood, I mean, it's amazing. And it's really a testament to the fact that this was just pent up forces that were waiting to be tapped.
Right. What has been the most satisfying and the most frustrating part of this journey so far? I want to ask you both that.
I think the most satisfying thing is really, it's like living a dream, right? So 2007, you start dreaming that you will create an outstanding university, which is going to be probably one of the best in the world. And you, 8 years later, 9 years later, you see it's happening, right? So it's very exciting. You get goosebumps when you think of that. Frustrating, if you ask me. I mean, fortunately, till now, no.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, I think
no one moment.
No one moment. I think the institution building does come with a fair bit of challenges.
Sure.
And I think India was not ready for private universities till a time. We fortunately started in 2008 when the whole regime was really opening up. I think some of the states were doing an outstanding job of really liberalizing. Haryana has done an outstanding job. Their private university act is very liberal. So timing was very important.
Key, right.
And there is so much talk and myth around how difficult it is to deal with bureaucracy, government, and set up institutions. I mean, fortunately for us, we've been quite lucky, and it has been very, very exciting. I'll tell you the one frustrating part, or not frustrating but disappointing part. Coming back to messaging, in the first year we went to 400 schools around the country. I mean, really talking about liberal arts and what does this mean. We were surprised that 80% of the schools did not have a humanities section.
Oh, really?
For 11th, 12th, yes. And half of the students in the sciences probably were not keen to pursue science.
Absolutely.
So I think that in a certain way was really, really very disappointing and a bit of a wake-up call.
I think the most satisfying thing is obviously to see how well our students are doing, and you can't, you can't match that. It's really amazing what some of our alumni are doing and how some of our undergraduates who will soon be alumni are doing. If I look at that population, it's amazing how much they are being able to do. What is the most exciting is that we have now built a model where for roughly $100 million or let's say 500 crores, right, you can actually build a greenfield new university in 5 years which can house 5,000 students, and I'm giving you rough numbers.
Sure.
Of very high quality. That's the opportunity we have in India. And that is also the frustrating thing, that not many people are doing
is sort of being done about it. Because that was actually, I was going to also bring that up, that you believe what the IITs and the IIMs have done for engineering and management, say, and Ashoka can do for liberal arts if you just see more people rising to the challenge.
People need to understand that great universities succeed and become great universities because of the governance of those universities. Right. And we haven't talked about that so far. But the truth is that we are founders, and he could have become chancellor and I could have become vice chancellor, or we could have appointed our own people from each of our businesses. We've not done that. We have truly over time devolved responsibility for the university to the professionals who we've hired, and they today run over a period of time. We are committed that alumni will be on the board of this institution. That's how great institutions are built, where no one owns them,
Right.
yet
And
everybody
everyone,
thinks.
everyone has a stake, and therefore.
And I think that kind of realization has to start to seep in if you are going to build high quality institutions around.